Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to look at exactly how to escape the modern-day paycheck-to-paycheck trap. We're breaking down a really fascinating framework that reveals how to manage your money exactly like the top 1%. And look, this isn't about, skipping your morning coffee or avocado toast. It's an actual, systemic blueprint for true financial independence.
So here's the absolute core wealth secret that most people miss entirely. If you don't own something, you are what's owned. The wealthy, they don't just earn cash, they own businesses and assets. Meanwhile, the remaining 99% of people are basically trapped, just trading their time for a salary. The system is essentially designed to keep you rich for a week and then completely skint by the end of the month, mostly spending your money on basic food, shelter, and water. Simply put, if you aren't building ownership, you're essentially owned by that system.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer on the 25-15-50-10 framework. First, we'll cover the wealth mindset shift, followed by the exact percentages to invest for growth, protect your progress, fund your essentials, and finally, reward yourself guilt-free.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the wealth mindset shift, owning your freedom.
Okay, let's dive into this. The fundamental rule you absolutely need to grasp right off the bat is that true wealth isn't about how much money you make, it is entirely about how you manage what you make. I mean, if we look at the world's richest people, 0%, literally zero, got there just by earning a standard employee salary. 75% are entrepreneurs who own businesses, 15% are investors who own assets, 7% inherited wealth through trusts, and 3% own incredibly rare skills. Do you notice the common denominator here? They all own something. And this brilliantly illustrates how we get there. It requires an exact division of every single paycheck you receive from now on. It's a 4-category, completely automated split. 25% for growth, 15% for stability, 50% for essentials, and 10% for rewards. This is the precise architecture you need to build true financial freedom. Moving on to Section 2, 25%. Invest for growth.
Now, to see what investing for growth actually looks like, let's look at Billy and Phil. And just to be clear, we aren't talking about mindset nonsense here, okay? We're talking about using this money to buy tangible assets that increase in value while you sleep. The numbers are just staggering. We have Billy, who started investing $200 a month at age 20. Then we have Phil. Phil waited until he was 30 but tried to catch up by investing $300 a month. Fast forward to age 60. Phil invested $108,000 total out of pocket, while Billy only put in $96,000. But assuming an average 10% return, like the S&P 500, Phil ends up with about $678,000. Billy? He ends up with a massive $1.26 million. Billy invested $12,000 less but walked away with nearly $600,000 more, simply because he started earlier. That is the jaw-dropping power of early compound interest.
So the crucial point is choosing the right assets to put that 25% into. You really want to build your foundation at the low-risk end with index funds, basically buying a slice of the whole market so you don't have to stress about picking winners. Then you have real estate and high-income skills, which offer incredibly fast returns on your investment. Honestly, only after those foundations are set solid should you even consider moving up to high-risk moonshots like individual stocks or crypto.
All right, here is the exact systemic process to execute this: growth. Step 1, select those low-risk foundational assets. Step 2, set up tax-advantaged accounts. Think like a Roth IRA in the US or a stocks and shares ISA in the UK. This legally shields your money, allowing it to grow and be withdrawn completely tax-free. And Step 3, automate your transfers on payday. You want the money leaving your primary account before you ever even see it. That way, you're never even tempted to spend it. Let's move into Section 3, 15%. Protect your progress.
So, while the growth fund builds your future, a stability fund acts as your essential armor. Without it, you're basically walking a tightrope without a net. Consider this highly relatable anecdote from the source material. A young guy buys a used VW Golf on a loan. He feels like he's on top of the world, right? Well, 3 months later, the engine completely blows up. With zero backup savings and needing the car for work, he's forced to take on even more debt, kicking off this horrible spiral of stress that sets his finances back an entire year. You see, most people don't actually have a money problem. They have a stability problem. One unexpected bill can force you to sell your hard-earned investments at a terrible loss.
To build this armor, follow these exact mechanics. First, calculate 5 months of your bare-bones baseline expenses. We're talking just rent, basic utilities, and groceries. Second, store this in a zero-risk high-yield savings account. Listen, this is not for investing. It must be accessible within 24 hours without any penalties, but it still needs to earn enough interest to fight inflation. And third, stack it quickly. Use your 15% payday sweep and speed it up with Roundup apps that literally drop your spare change directly into this account.
Section 4. 50%. Fund your essentials.
Now, before you think this sounds super easy, consider this shocking fact. Over 60% of Americans earning over $100,000 a year still live paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because they confuse needs with ego. The problem really lies in our modern definition of needs versus wants. True essentials are what actually keep you alive and functioning: rent, utilities, basic groceries. Luxuries masquerading as essentials, that's the takeout, the Amazon subscriptions you totally forgot about, and the designer clothing drops. To ruthlessly cap your lifestyle at 50%, you have to renegotiate your rent, maybe consider house hacking, and absolutely buy used, reliable cars rather than leasing a brand new vehicle just for a monthly status hit.
When you're tempted to break that 50% limit, ask yourself, is this an impulse purchase? If it is, apply the 7-day rule. The top 1% do not rely on willpower when they're stressed or tired. No, they build systems. By forcing yourself to pause for a week, you let the excitement completely fade. And honestly, most of the time, after 7 days, you'll realize you didn't actually need the thing at all.
But hey, if you still want it after 7 days, you have to evaluate the cost per use, because wealthy people chase quality, not marketing. Look at it this way. A $60 pair of boots worn 100 times costs you just 60 cents per wear. That is incredible value. But a $200 pair of designer trainers that you only wear twice, that costs you $100 per wear. Stop throwing money at a brand's marketing department and start calculating the true value of what you actually bring into your life.
Let's move to our final pillar, Section 5, 10%. Reward yourself guilt-free.
Now let's see how this builds into a really interesting narrative twist. A successful financial diet actually requires you to have fun. If you just endlessly save and invest without ever actually living, the process becomes utterly miserable. In fact, 92% of people overspend after intensive saving sprints. Saving without joy quickly feels like a punishment. So this 10%, it isn't an excuse to be reckless. It is a mandatory sustainable strategy. Think of it kind of like a financial cheat meal. It's what keeps you sane and committed to the larger plan.
The source material details creating what it calls a joy jar for highly valuable categories: vacations, hobbies, nights out, and meaningful gifts. There's this really powerful anecdote in the source about a driven entrepreneur who completely ignored vacations so he could build his businesses. Well, he ended up diagnosed with stress-induced shingles. Spending this 10% guilt-free on your health, your relationships, and your experiences is an absolute necessity to prevent burnout.
To actually make this work, you must preload the fund. Automate that 10% into a completely separate bank account. Then when you go out with friends, you spend straight from this joy jar. Because it's capped, you never feel deprived, but you also never derail your wealth building. The key takeaway here is prioritizing memorable experiences with the people you love rather than trying to fill a garage full of depreciating cars.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative question to ponder. With your next paycheck, are you just funding your lifestyle, or are you finally funding your freedom? Remember, true wealth is the money you don't see. It's the investments going quietly in the background and the stability fund keeping you perfectly safe. I really hope this explainer inspires you to automate that very next paycheck and take absolute control of your financial future. Thanks for tuning in and keep learning.